पड़े तो. So today's agenda is sources of money supply और डिमांड फॉर मनी एंड इवेंचुअली हम फिर आगे बात करेंगे. अब जहां तक सोर्सेज ऑफ मनी सप्लाई की बात आती है, तो वी फ्रॉम आवर लास्ट क्लास ओनली विल ट्राई एंड अंडरस्टैंड समथिंग. हमने कहा ऑन द टॉप यू हैव अ सेंट्रल बैंक responsible for managing. What we have next is, say, the commercial banks, and we have plenty and plenty of commercial banks. और फिर उसके बाद we have an economy which has households and lots of firms, and इनके आपस के अंदर हमने सर्कुलर फ्लो के अंदर हर किस्म की कई किस्म की गुड्स, रिसोर्सेज, इनकम, कंजम्पशन, इन सब चीजों की एक्सपेंडिचर्स देखे. अब to work this economy, let me call this as an economy. To effectively run this economy, we say four factors of production goes from the household to the firms. Firms pays the income for it, uses the factors of production to produce goods, and then they make the payment, and the economy functions. Very good. But इस इकोनॉमी में से अगर आप मनी सप्लाई को निकाल दो, तो then this economy comes to a halt, because like we said, money fuels an economy, it makes the economy work. You take the money out of the system and there is no transactions. You go to barter, and barter has its limitation. The entire economy slows down. Economy relies heavily on debt. Debt matlab credit, कर्जा. And firms and households needs to continuously borrow money. एक तो one side we said they deposit the money, और दूसरी साइड के ऊपर they take credit, यानी they take loans. ठीक. दिस इज हाउ कमर्शियल बैंक्स और फर्म्स और हाउसहोल्ड्स का रिलेशनशिप है. फिर उसके बाद हमने ये भी कहा कि सेंट्रल बैंक के साथ भी एक रिलेशनशिप है. कमर्शियल बैंक पैसे रखवाती है सेफ कीपिंग के लिए, और कभी बोरोइंग करने की जरूरत होती है तो बोरो भी करते हैं. सोर्सेज ऑफ मनी के अंदर वी वांट टू अंडरस्टैंड इस इकोनॉमी के अंदर पैसा कहां कहां से इंजेक्ट होता है. So try and follow some of the ways through which money comes into the system. सबसे ज्यादा जो तरीका है सिस्टम के अंदर पैसे लेकर आने का, that is done by the government. All right. Now, government की responsibility है to effectively and efficiently make the economy work. अब गवर्नमेंट्स के पास एक पीस ऑफ पेपर होता है जिसकी बेसिस पे वो पैसे बोरो करते हैं, एंड दैट्स कॉल्ड अ बॉन्ड. देयर कैन बी ऑल सॉर्ट्स ऑफ बॉन्ड्स. यू कैन हैव लेस देन अ ईयर वाले ट्रेजरी बिल्स एंड मोर देन अ ईयर वाले ट्रेजरी बॉन्ड्स. अ बॉन्ड बेसिकली टेल्स कि द गवर्नमेंट नीड्स एक्स अमाउंट ऑफ मनी. तो एक बॉन्ड है 1,000 रुपए का. हो गया. And this bond will give an interest rate of 10%. And this bond will mature after 3 years when the government is going to pay the money back. But every year, the government is going to give a coupon payment, which is an interest payment of about 100 rupees. Okay. So for 3 years, I'm going to make 100 rupees risk-free. Government has to give me 100 rupees unless they default, which they generally don't. But they have to pay me 100 rupees every single year for giving 1,000 bucks. Now I can buy as many bonds as I want, depending on how much money the government wants to raise. अब एक तरीका है गवर्नमेंट के पास कि they sell the bond to the central bank and take the money from them, right? And then spend that money into the system. Do you see? They basically take the money from them and they spend it in the economy. And now the government has to pay the central bank interest for 3 years, and that's fine. Economy में money supply आ गया. That is one source. तो इस बात को क्लियर करने के लिए पहले तो ये बात कर लेते हैं कि ये बॉन्ड्स गवर्नमेंट को क्यों चाहिए, बिकॉज गवर्नमेंट का जो बजट है, their spending is greater than the revenue that they're generating. And so they need to borrow money. इसको कहते हैं debt financing. Government needs debt financing. That means they need the money from somewhere. So basically, this is what they'll do. ये banking sector से अब now the central bank will create artificial money, print that money, give it to the government, and the government will spend that money. Economy में money supply goes up. एक ये तरीका है. दूसरा तरीका, government can go to the commercial banks, give them the bonds, and take the money from them. अभी कमर्शियल बैंक के पास कहां से आए पैसे? ऑब्वियसली जो हमने डिपॉजिट्स रखाए थे, कमर्शियल बैंक के पास बहुत सारा डिपॉजिट था फॉर प्रॉफिटेबिलिटी. दे गेव इट टू द गवर्नमेंट. गवर्नमेंट सेड बॉन्ड्स 10% के ऊपर 3 years तक दे गोइंग टू मेक मनी, पे ऑफ फॉर द इन्वेस्टमेंट्स. बट द पॉइंट इज कमर्शियल बैंक से पैसे लिए, गवर्नमेंट ले लिए, स्पेंडिंग की, इकोनॉमी में मनी सप्लाई गोज अप. तो पहला source of money is that government through debt financing can take the money from the banks, and it can be commercial and it can be central. इन दोनों सिनेरियो के अंदर इकोनॉमी के अंदर मनी सप्लाई इंक्रीज हो जाएगा, बिकॉज एक तरफ प्रिंट होके आ गए पैसे, दूसरी तरफ हाउस होल्ड के जो पैसे थे वो सिस्टम में आ गए. Why am I saying कि कमर्शियल बैंक्स का भी मनी सप्लाई इंक्रीज हो रहा है? बिकॉज रिमेंबर, जब हाउस होल्ड्स अपने पैसे कमर्शियल बैंक्स के पास रखाते हैं and the commercial bank loans it out, that doesn't mean that the household cannot go and get their money back. They still can get their money back. Okay? ये जो इन्होंने डिपॉजिट रखाया था कमर्शियल बैंक फॉर लिक्विडिटी एंड प्रॉफिटेबिलिटी, they're running their own side gig basically. Okay? अब दूसरी चीज, ये तो एक सोर्स हो गया कि गवर्नमेंट कैन बोरो फ्रॉम द बैंक्स and that will increase the money supply in the economy. Another thing government can do is directly go to the people, give them the bonds, and take the money from them. Okay? Now, these people, firms and households have bonds in hand, So they can't spend on the bonds anymore. They hold the bonds with them. They've given up on the money. So now they don't have the money. Then government takes that money and spends it back into the economy. So what has happened to the money supply in the economy? We say money supply has remained unchanged. क्योंकि एक एंड पे आपने पब्लिक से पैसे ले लिए और दूसरे एंड के ऊपर आपने वो ही जाके वापस से सिस्टम में इंजेक्ट कर दिया. So this will not increase or decrease money supply. It will keep the money supply the same. So in short, whenever government borrows for its spending, if it borrows from the banking sector, economy में money supply बढ़ जाएगा. But if it borrows from non-banking private sector, then the money supply remains unchanged. तो ये एक तरीका हो गया. Another तरीका जिसको हम बोलते हैं quantitative easing. Quantitative easing is done directly by the central bank. What they'll do is, if they want to increase the money supply in the economy, central banks will directly go to the households, okay, and they will purchase those bonds that they have. They will take the bonds and give the people money. That's how the money supply will increase also. That is another way through which they can increase the money supply. So if the question is, what if everyone in society wants to deposit all the money from central bank? What does that mean? You mean to ask if people want to deposit their money in the central bank, they'll tell you to go away. Um, because central bank does not deal with people and firms, they deal with commercial bank. If you're saying if what if everybody wants to deposit the money in the commercial banks will have lots and lots of money, and people would want some return on that money. So that's a problem also. So government, the commercial bank will need to loan the money to somebody. Probably the government. Pakistan के case में, it's always the government that they loan the money out to mostly, and households and firms also, but mostly
सर मैंने
government.
शायद गलत तरीके से पूछा. अगर लाइक सोसाइटी में सब पैसा निकालना चाहे अपने बैंक में से जो रखा तो सेविंग्स
Yeah.
वापस
Oh, now
निकालना चाहे,
that's a problem.
सब तो सफिशिएंट फंड्स होंगे.
Okay, so let's last we probably did speak about that. That's called run on the banks. बेसिकली हाउसहोल्ड्स ने जो अपने पैसे डिपॉजिट किए हैं कमर्शियल बैंक्स के अंदर विद द ट्रस्ट दैट कमर्शियल बैंक विल कीप आवर मनी सेफ एंड व्हेन वी वांट आवर मनी बैक दे विल हैव इनफ मनी टू गिव इट बैक टू अस आल्सो. So with that trust, everybody over here, firms, households, arbo rupiah gives it to the commercial bank. Commercial bank wants to make profit on the money because they've seen that people don't come to take all their money out at the same time. Central bank last में हमने बात की थी. Central bank requires commercial bank to keep an X amount of money with them, just in case if people want to borrow money or get their money back, you should have enough liquidity. लेकिन अगर कमर्शियल बैंक ने वो पैसे आगे गवर्नमेंट को लोन आउट कर दिए हैं या किसी को भी लोन आउट कर दिए हैं एंड नाउ पीपल गो एंड दे आस्क फॉर देयर मनी बैक, if it's a small percentage of people who does that, no problem, they'll pay you somebody else's money that they have, or they'll borrow from the central bank and give it. Lekin if everyone comes, that's called run on the bank. That's where the commercial bank will say, we don't have everybody's money. And that's going to start a panic. And more people will come to withdraw their money. यहाँ पे central bank का role becomes important, that whether the central bank will come to bail them out and give commercial banks money to give their people back so that they get sukoon. But that's only a crisis situation. That's rarely happens. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. It happens all the time, but it rarely happens when economic institution breaks down. Normally ये होता नहीं है. Okay. ये हो सकता है कि certain बैंक ने बहुत ही ज्यादा bad loans दे दिए and now they're taking losses. तो ऐसी situation के अंदर problem will arise. Obviously क्योंकि bad loans हैं तो commercial bank will have to take loans from the central bank to pay their people money or probably like sell off their bank because आप अच्छा operate नहीं कर रहे थे तो other big bank might be interested in buying you. ये possibilities हो सकती हैं. I hope that answers. So what I've explained over here is an idea of quantitative easing. तो एक सोर्स ऑफ मनी सप्लाई इज गवर्नमेंट की डेट फाइनेंसिंग फ्रॉम बैंकिंग सेक्टर और नॉन बैंकिंग सेक्टर. एक तरीका है सेंट्रल बैंक का डायरेक्टली पब्लिक को जाके बॉन्ड्स उनसे खरीद लिया जाए. अच्छा सिर्फ इनसे नहीं, इट कैन एक्चुअली बी कि कमर्शियल बैंक से भी जाके खरीद सकते हैं वो ये. ठीक है, कमर्शियल बैंक से जाके खरीद लिया और कमर्शियल बैंक से बोला वो जो आपके पास गवर्नमेंट के बॉन्ड्स रखे हुए हैं वो आप हमें दे दें और फिर उनको पैसे दे दें कि आपके पास अब मनी सप्लाई बढ़ गया, नाउ यू कैन लोन आउट money to the people. तो इसको हम quantitative easing कहते हैं where central bank directly gets involved and does that. Okay. इसके अलावा कमर्शियल बैंक्स इंडिपेंडेंटली भी इकोनॉमी के अंदर पैसा क्रिएट करते हैं. दैट इज कॉल्ड credit creation. You might have gone through that in the lectures. I will, through an image, let me have a discussion of how commercial banks also create credit in the market. Uske liye, let me just go back to my flow diagram. You know how जब भी हाउस होल्ड जाके अपने पैसे कमर्शियल बैंक में डिपॉजिट कराते हैं तो कमर्शियल बैंक फिर क्या करता है, उसको लोन आउट करता है, राइट? दिस इज द होल क्रेडिट क्रिएशन का कॉन्सेप्ट एंड सी एंड ट्राई एंड अंडरस्टैंड हाउ इट बेसिकली वर्क्स. पाकिस्तानी इकोनॉमी के अंदर Musa basically decides that is 100 pounds that he has, he wants to deposit that money into his favorite bank. Let's say आजकल favorite UBL चल रहा है. Now, Musa puts his money in the UBL bank. UBL bank says thank you, and central bank has told them that you have to keep 10%, that's your liquidity ratio, cash ratio, reserve ratio. UBL, you are allowed to keep 10% of that money with you in cash so that if Musa or anybody else comes in the future to take that money or some money of that, you have liquidity and you can pay them off. So keep 10,000 of 100,000 with yourself and you are allowed to loan out 90,000 to whoever wants to borrow. ठीक है? तो one thing we know right now is कि इकोनॉमी के अंदर मनी सप्लाई के अंदर there is 100,000 का पैसा in the system which Musa has, and he's put it in his bank which is still his money. He can go and he can take that money out anytime he wants. UBL, what they've done is they've kept 10% and they've loaned out 90,000 to Mrs. Bo who wants to buy a yacht. So Mrs. Bo goes to her bank, her favorite bank, UBL. She takes 90,000. Okay. अब बैंक के अंदर इसकी ट्रांजैक्शन कैसे रिकॉर्ड होगी? थोड़े अकाउंट्स वालों के लिए है ये, लेकिन आई एम श्योर तुम सबके पास ये होगा अकाउंट्स. तो बैंक ये बोलेगा, यूबीएल का बैंक, they'll say कि नंबर वन, वी ओ मनी टू मूसा बिकॉज मूसा ने जो हमें पैसे डिपॉजिट कराए हैं, इट्स अ लाइबिलिटी ऑन अस, इट्स अ मूसा's डिपॉजिट. लाइबिलिटी हम राइट साइड पे रिकॉर्ड, लेकिन वी नो दिस नीड्स टू बैलेंस ऑफ. So the balancing act is that he's given us cash, so we have asset cash के point of view से. तो मेरी balance of payment balance हो गई है. But now something different has happened. What has happened? I don't have this cash anymore available because I have put that money, I have loaned that money out. I've only kept 10,000 of it in cash, and I have loaned the money to Mrs. Bo, or Mrs. Bo is my accounts receivable, because she is liable to pay me 90,000. So whoever borrows from the bank is basically a bank's asset. अब इस तरह से ये बैलेंस हो गया. Very good. ठीक. So this is what has happened now. Up the next thing is, what's going to happen next is, one second, please. Sorry about that. Yeah. So what's going to happen next is, Mrs. Bo is going to buy the yacht and she has to pay the captain for it. Captain earns 90,000 of that cash. ये जो cash गया था, ये अब निकला वहां से, and it goes to the captain. The captain goes to his favorite bank. Let's say his favorite bank is Mizan. That's also one of the very prominent banks in Pakistan, top ranking bank, in fact. Ab, what has happened is, Mizan Bank is going to see कि हमारे पास एक डिपॉजिट आया है कैप्टन के पैसे का, and it's a liability for Mizan Bank, and they're going to record we got 90,000 ka cash and we have to pay captain if he needs his money back. But as it is, Mizan Bank ke liye, they've gotten cash of 90,000, of which they'll keep 10% of it, which is 9,000, and they can loan the money out to whoever. In this case, Mrs. Houseman wants a house. So I'm going to give her 81,000. Do you see? अब मीजान के पास वो पैसा डिपॉजिट हो गया. तो इकोनॉमी के अंदर, at any point, Musa wants to. So अभी तक इकोनॉमी के अंदर Musa's 100,000 plus 90,000, which the captain has earned. Remember, captain can go and take his money out whenever he wants. The bank, Mizan Bank, cannot say कि हमने वो Mrs. Houseman को दे दिया है. तो एक क्रेडिट क्रिएट हुआ है. This 90,000 is credit. उसके बाद 81,000 has been created as credit. और ये पैसा फिर इवेंचुअली, लेट्स सपोज, मिसेस हाउसमैन ने घर खरीदा, बिल्डर को पैसे दिए, द बिल्डर गोज एंड ही कीप्स मनी इन हिज फेवरेट बैंक व्हिच इज एमसीबी. सेम थिंग विल हैपन विद एमसीबी. एमसीबी के पास जो है, एक लोन आए, एक डिपॉजिट आएगा विच इज द लाइबिलिटी मिस्टर हाउसमैन का, 81,000 का, और फिर वो कैश में जाएगा, फिर वो उसको लोन आउट करेंगे टू द मिस्टर टेक्निकल. And that's how the money will keep on increasing in the economy. और वो basically loan create करता जाएगा, करता जाएगा, करता जाएगा. 72,900, I think. 900, and then it's 65,610. And if you notice, this number will keep on going until it comes near zero. So what has happened is, commercial banks are involved in creating money supply in the economy, which is in the form of credit, basically. Okay, and credits are very, very important. ये central bank ने commercial banks को power दी हुई है कि you can create credit, you can loan the money out, just do it smartly that you have liquidity, that if Musa
सर
comes to
एक
get his
सवाल
money,
मेरा
you have enough deposits that 10% of many people is enough to pay people like whoever wants to come and take their money out, so that you don't have a run on the bank and the scare to the people, to your depositors, your clients, that you know what, this bank is taking our money, loaning out risky places के ऊपर, and now they don't have our money, so that's a problem, right? So ये पूरा आपका सिस्टम होता है जिसको हम क्रेडिट क्रिएशन कहते हैं. Up to calculate what is the net effect of this whole thing, तो you have a formula जो बैम्फर्ड में थोड़ा डिफरेंटली है, मैं थोड़ा डिफरेंटली पढ़ाता हूँ, बट बैम्फर्ड के अंदर जो है वो ये है कि क्रेडिट मल्टीप्लायर के हाउ मच टाइम every deposit will multiply into is 100 divided by the cash ratio, liquidity ratio, or whatever that ratio is called. There are different names for that liquidity ratio, right? So in this case, the liquidity ratio was 10%, right? So 100 divided by 10 gives us 10. This is our money multiplication. What does that mean? Anytime there is a change in deposit, that deposit will go through the money multiplier and it will create an impact on the money supply. So, this example of ours, how will it work? This is how it will work. Musa deposited £100. Money multiplier is 10. ये जो ऊपर हमने पूरा process discuss किया है, this process will keep on going and total economy के अंदर 1 million का money supply create हो गया. You understand that? Because banks to bank to bank to bank पैसा move करता जा रहा है because of one single deposit, the credit creation kept on happening. अब इस 1 million में से if you notice, जो 100,000 था वो तो initial deposit था, right? जो 900,000 है, that is the credit or the loan that has been created, and you will be required to do this calculation and find out based on the money multiplier reserve ratio, if 500,000 is deposited, तो उसकी वजह से कितना इकोनॉमी में मनी सप्लाई चेंज आएगा और कितना क्रेडिट क्रिएट होगा. यू आर सपोज टू वर्क दैट आउट. ठीक हो गया? तो in my sources of money, commercial banks also create money supply in the economy through this process of credit creation. So now we have three places where the source of money is coming from. Number one, government की debt financing. Number two, central bank की directly quantitative easing. Number three, commercial banks की credit creation. And number four is when households basically directly gets involved with the international community like sometimes what firms do is they sell goods and services, they export goods. When they export goods, they have to make payments in terms of the revenue. वो रेवेन्यू जब इस इकोनॉमी के अंदर आता है तो इट्स फ्रेश न्यू मनी विच इज कमिंग इनटू द सिस्टम इन अ वेरी सिंपलिस्टिक वे. दैट इज व्हाट इज हैपनिंग. यू एक्सपोर्ट गुड्स एंड यू गेट द पेमेंट्स. वैसे तो पेमेंट्स इंटरनेशनल, जैसे फॉर एग्जांपल इंटरनेशनल मार्केट में डॉलर चलता है और यहाँ जो है वो रुपीस चलता है. So basically what happens is in the international market, when they make the payment, they have the dollars. They go to the foreign exchange market वहां जाते हैं और वहां डॉलर्स दे के रुपया खरीदते हैं और फिर पेमेंट्स रुपये में करते हैं, तो फ्रेश न्यू मनी कम्स इनटू द सिस्टम, एंड दैट्स हाउ मनी सप्लाई कैन ऑल्सो इंक्रीज. If our imports are more, then the money goes out. तो बेसिकली अगर नेट एक्सपोर्ट्स पॉजिटिव है, तो दैट मीन्स देयर इज मोर मनी कमिंग इनटू द सिस्टम देन गोइंग आउट, एंड दैट इज आवर फोर्थ वे. ये सिर्फ एक्सपोर्ट इंपोर्ट पे लिमिट नहीं है. समटाइम्स फॉरेनर्स इन्वेस्ट इन इन पाकिस्तान गवर्नमेंट बॉन्ड्स. तो वो क्या करते हैं, इंटरनेशनल मार्केट बेसिकली सीधा जाते हैं, गवर्नमेंट के बॉन्ड्स खरीदते हैं. तो फॉरेन एक्सचेंज मार्केट में यूं बॉन्ड्स आ जाते हैं और मनी गवर्नमेंट के पास आती है, फिर गवर्नमेंट उस पैसे को खर्च करके इकोनॉमी में स्पेंड कर देती है. तो दैट इज ऑल्सो वन ऑफ द सोर्स. ये फोर्थ सोर्स है थ्रू इंटरनेशनल मार्केट. So basically, that sums up our sources of money, and you can go over this in your in the lecture. I've explained this whole thing over there as well. So, from your course point of view, इकोनॉमी के अंदर अभी तक हमने क्या पढ़ा है कि मनी सप्लाई इकोनॉमी के अंदर जो है, let's count it in the diagram terms. You have quantity for money and you have the interest rate. ठीक. अब एक इकोनॉमी के अंदर मनी सप्लाई एक वक्त के अंदर कितना होता है. तो फ्रॉम अ वेरी सिंपल थ्योरी, एंड आई विल राइट ओवर हियर, in a simple theory where the government, the central bank, sorry, has a strong control over the money supply. तो इकोनॉमी के अंदर जो मनी सप्लाई होगी in a given period of time, it's going to be, sorry, it's going to be like this. The money supply is like this. एक वक्त एक इकोनॉमी के अंदर जो क्वांटिटी ऑफ मनी है वो फिक्स्ड है. एज यू कैन सी ओवर हियर, द मनी सप्लाई इज फिक्स्ड. Whether the interest rate is 3% or it is 7%, एक इकोनॉमी के अंदर the amount of money, account of coins, notes, bank deposits are amounting to 3 trillion. And that's fixed. Interest rate ऊपर जाए कम हो, makes no difference. That's a very simple money supply का idea कि एक particular given time period के अंदर money supply tends to be like this. This is a very short run concept, by the way. Okay? It's a short run concept. But in a complex theory, mainly discussed by the Keynesians, they say it's not like this. It's more on the long run side also. According to them, if the interest rate is 3%, there is a certain amount of money supply in the economy. Okay? But according to them, if interest rate rises to 7%, the money supply does not remain the same. The money supply actually increases in the economy. It slightly increases in the economy, and therefore, the money supply curve is not a straight line anymore. It's more like a forward tilting curve. And obviously, the complex theory has a reasoning for it. The reasoning is this: when interest rate rises, people start saving. And when they save more, they deposit their money in their banks to earn interest. And when the banks get the deposit, we just did, the bank starts with the whole credit creation ka process. And that credit creation starts creating debt. And that debt increases the money supply in the economy. You follow? This is the structure. This is how it works. That's why it's forward tilting. Which one should you make? शॉर्ट रन बात कर रहे हो तो वर्टिकल बना लेना, लॉन्ग रन बना रहे हो तो थोड़ा सा आगे बना देना। देयर इज नो प्रॉब्लम इफ नन ऑफ देम आर रॉन्ग। स्लोमन की बुक के अंदर दोनों के ऊपर डिस्कशन हुआ है, परफेक्टली फाइन, नो प्रॉब्लम व्हाटसोएवर। दे हैव कॉम्प्लेक्स थ्योरी के अंदर दे हैव गिवन अनदर रीजन फॉर इट। इंटरेस्ट रेट गोज अप, foreigners starts investing in your country, that's called hot money। सो बेसिकली जो फॉरेनर्स होते हैं वो पाकिस्तान के अंदर इन्वेस्ट करना शुरू कर देंगे, जिससे इनफ्लोज बढ़ेंगे, और जब इनफ्लोज बढ़ेंगे तो मनी सप्लाई इंक्रीज हो जाएगा सिस्टम में। सो दैट्स अनदर वे ऑफ लुकिंग एट इट। ठीक है, बट दैट्स व्हाट इंटरेस्ट रेट्स विल डू, एंड दैट्स हाउ द मनी सप्लाई बेसिकली वर्क्स इन द इकोनॉमी। एनी क्वेश्चंस ऑन दिस सो far? Because now we're moving towards the monetary policy wali side, but we're still not there. So today we're dealing with money supply, the sources of money supply, and how the graph works. The second thing is the demand for money, because market के अंदर if we say interest rate कैसे determine होता है, तो supply for money and demand for money collectively will decide that. Now, why do people demand money is what we want to understand. Why do people demand money? तुम और मैं, coins, notes, or bank deposits, why do we need it? Obviously, to do transactions or save our money, the four functions of what money is. ठीक है? But they basically discuss it in three motives people have. Okay? What are those three motives? Number one, people need cash and coins and bank deposits when they need to do transactions. It's called transactionary demand for money. This is basically household saying कि मेरा महीने का हाउस होल्ड रन करने का खर्चा है 5 लाख रुपया। I have to pay my driver, I have to pay for groceries, for electricity, for maybe car loans that I have, for groceries I've said, for petrol and all of that. All sorts of expenditures that we do for restaurants and all. I have to spend 5 लाख रुपया। ठीक है, अब इंटरेस्ट रेट बढ़े या कम हुए, माई हाउस होल्ड एक्सपेंडिचर इज 5 लाख रुपया। तो इंटरेस्ट रेट वुड नॉट मैटर whether it's 3% or if it is 7%, I have to spend 5 lakh rupees. So the demand for transactions is 5 lakh rupees. Interest rate is 3% or 7%, makes no difference. I need that cash. Okay. For the firms, it could be emergency machine breakdown, to buy raw material, not emergency breakdown, but to pay for my labor, to pay for the raw material, to pay for any interest payments I have, right? So for the expenses. तो ये पहला motive हो गया. The second motive why people demand money is precautionary. This is the money people keep for emergencies. I know कि मेरा खर्चा 5 लाख रुपए का है, but I'll still keep a couple of lakh rupees in my account just in case I need it. AC खराब हो गया घर का, फ्रिज खराब हो गया, अनफोर्सीन डैमेज हो गया कोई जो मुझे ठीक करना है, एक्सीडेंट हो गया, I need to flee the country. It could be anything. For a firm, it could be maintenance की costs वगैरह. So this is that emergency money that we keep on the side just in case. It's not much, by the way, and especially credit cards के आने के बाद तो लोगों ने अपनी precautionary money वैसे भी कम ही कर दिया है, because at the end of the day जब आपके पास credit card है and you have a credit limit, okay, in case if something medical happens, so for this month I'm good to go, I'll use my credit card. But from theoretical perspective, this is how the precautionary demand for money works. If the interest rate is 3%, I will keep X amount of money. But if the interest rate goes up to 7%, then I'll keep relatively lesser precaution of money. In fact, I'll give you an example. This is what I personally feel that I must have recently gone through this experience that when I invest in stock market, let's say, or people are buying a lot of gold and silver, normally I would keep 3 lakh rupees in my account cash, you know, that in case precautionary if I need it for whatever reason. Okay. Although I have credit cards and all, but credit cards पे cash नहीं चलता हर जगह. ठीक है, so I don't want to be bound. I'll keep cash in hand just in case. But if I see that the gold prices are rising at a much faster rate and stock market is maybe like doing well, and instead of earning 3%, now I have the possibility to earn 7%, 10%, 20%. I'll think to myself and I'll say, yeah, you know what? I don't need, honestly, if I think about it, I'm not going to need this 3 lakh rupees. Max क्या हो जाएगा 1 लाख रुपया बाकी मैं क्रेडिट कार्ड पे डाल दूंगा. So based on that idea, now I don't need to keep 3 lakh rupees. It's better that I take that 2 lakh rupees and I invest it somewhere because I don't need it for transaction. I don't need it for precaution. So therefore, the third reason why people demand money is called the asset motive or speculation motive. कि let's suppose अगर मैं 10 लाख रुपए कमाता हूं तो 3% अगर इंटरेस्ट रेट था मार्केट में तो एज आई एक्सप्लेन ऊपर उस 10 लाख में से 5 लाख जो है मैं ट्रांजैक्शन कर लूंगा. फिर जो 5 बचे उसमें से मैंने कहा था कि 3% के ऊपर 3 लाख रुपीस जो है मैं प्रिकॉशन के लिए रखूंगा और जो 2 लाख रुपया है उससे मैं स्पेकुलेट करूंगा. स्पेकुलेट मतलब दैट मनी इज आइडल विद बाय द वे. इसको हम कहते हैं आइडल मनी. और बाकी ऊपर जो दो थे अगर मैं इन दोनों को ऐड कर लूं ना ट्रांजैक्शनरी और प्रिकॉशनरी को तो इसको हम बोलते हैं एक्टिव बैलेंस. मतलब ये किसी पर्पस के लिए आई हैव यूज्ड ट्रांजैक्शनरी एंड प्रिकॉशनरी. ये जो नीचे मेरे पास एक्स्ट्रा कैश इन हैंड बचता है दिस इज कॉल्ड एन आइडल बैलेंस. इट इज नॉट डूइंग एनीथिंग. तो व्हाट आई वांट टू कीप दिस इज फॉर is to invest it. Okay, I want to make some money off it. I want to invest it somewhere. I want to invest it in bonds. Okay, bonds are the risk-free ones. I can invest in stock also, but हम अपने course purposes के लिए bonds का discussion लेके चलेंगे. Same idea. If the market interest rate is high, 7% or higher, I might decide that I don't want to hold much cash in hand. छोटा सा cash रखता हूँ. This is what I do sometimes, by the way. Even if the stock market is giving me good money, what I'll do is I'll keep in my stockbroker's account maybe like 10% of idle cash that in case if a better opportunity comes, I will invest that. ठीक है? So if interest rate goes up, I am going to invest that money which I've kept on the side for speculation also. Okay? But if interest rate starts to go down, that means I'm getting lesser return, right? In those bonds, in those stocks. I'm not getting good returns. 3%, I might say to myself, 3% is too low for me as a return for any investment risk. I don't want to do that. वो जो मेरे 2 लाख रुपए मेरे पास बचे थे at 3%, I might decide it's too less to invest anywhere. So I'll keep that 2 lakh to myself. But if the interest rate goes up, I might decide to just keep 50,000 of it, which is 0.5 of that lakh rupees. I'll just keep 50,000 rupees with me, right? Instead of investing. तो स्पेक्यूलेशन का जो डिमांड कर्व बनता है वो कुछ इस तरह से होता है. This is how the demand for speculation or asset demand is. If the interest rate is high, I want to keep less cash in hand. If interest rate is low, because now that's too risky, 3% में क्या मजा आएगा? That's too risky. So I'm just going to hold more cash in hand. There will be people who might still decide, hey, you know what, I will still invest some, okay? Because there is a chance that interest rate might fall. तो यहां पर मैं एक बात करूंगा and then I will explain something. If the interest rate is high, then bond prices are low. And when interest rate is low, then bond prices are high. There is a connection. I would like to go over that connection. That ये किस तरीके से? Why do I say that? Okay. So there's a reason for it. You remember the bond that I was talking about? Government का bond होता है एक. So government has a bond, a piece of paper, which says the government is going to take 1,000 rupees from it for 3 years. State Bank of Pakistan ने bond issue किया है on behalf of the government, and it's going to pay me 10% interest. That means my yield is 100 rupees per year, per annum. Okay? Right. Sorry. Yeah. Now I'm going to get 100 rupees per annum. Now, what's going to happen is let's suppose I bought this and I'm in my second year now. Okay? And I don't want this bond anymore. I want to sell it. I need the cash. अब ये बॉन्ड 3 साल में mature होगा. So I can't go to the state bank and say मेरे पैसे वापस करो. Take the bond back. I can't do that. So I'll go to the secondary market where bonds, इस तरह के पुराने bonds जो हैं वो trade हो रहे होते हैं. Now just imagine market में interest rate has gone up to 12%. Okay? But ये जो मेरे पास bond है वो 10% return देता है. Now anyone who has fresh 1,000 rupees will not buy this bond, which is giving 10% ka return for 1,000 rupees. They're going to buy the fresh new bonds, which are offering 12%. So me, I'm stuck. क्योंकि market में interest rate ऊपर चला गया है, now my bond, nobody will buy for this 1,000 rupees, so I will have to give a discount. तो ये जो मेरा bond है, if the market interest rate goes up, then मेरे पास जो bond है, उसकी price गिर जाएगी. वो discount पे sell होगा. Because anyone who's going to invest the 1,000 rupees are now going to make not 100, but they're going to make 120. तो इसकी वजह से जो existing bonds हैं market में, they will lose their value if market interest rates goes up. लेकिन for example, in Pakistan's case, what is happening is that the bond prices are actually falling down now. The interest rates are likely to fall down. अब वो 10% से let's suppose 8% पे आ जाता है. Whoever has fresh 1,000 rupees to invest can invest for 8%. So if I have this 10% wala bond, which will give you 100 rupees because नई investment will 1,000 के ऊपर you're only going to get 80 rupees. So my bond, which I have, is now has become precious for the market. और उस preciousness की वजह से what has happened is because the interest rate has gone low, मेरा जो बॉन्ड है उसकी प्राइस राइज हो जाएगी और वो एक प्रीमियम पे बिकेगा. basically. So this is what I meant when I was saying that interest rates and bonds operate differently. If market interest rate is high, the bond prices have fallen down. The existing bonds have fallen down because they're giving you low yields. People will expect that maybe the interest rate will go down. And when people will expect interest rates will go down, the existing bonds at their prices will start to rise. And as the bond prices will start to rise, people will start selling those bonds because they will feel the interest rates have come down. Now it may not come down anymore. So some people will start selling. But many will say कि 7% नहीं मिल रहा तो कोई बात नहीं, 5% मिल रहा है, 5% नहीं मिल रहा तो 4 मिल रहा है, 4 नहीं मिल रहा तो 3 मिल रहा है. At least we're getting something because remember when you hold cash, you don't earn anything. So you want to invest somewhere less risky and you want to continuously generate money. तो यहाँ पर as market interest rate goes down, the bond prices will start to go up and people will start liquidating themselves. They're going to start selling the bonds and the demand for money will start to increase. A point आएगा when people will realize that interest rates have gone too low. It can't go any lower than this. This is the peak of the bond prices. They're going to sell it all, or at least they'll try to sell it all and liquidate themselves. Because they'll expect कि अब ये जब इतना नीचे आ गया है और बॉन्ड प्राइसेस इतनी हाई हो गई हैं, अब इंटरेस्ट रेट ऊपर जाएगा जब और बॉन्ड प्राइसेस गिरेंगी, तो इट्स अ good idea that let's start selling. जब इंटरेस्ट रेट ऊपर जाएगा, बॉन्ड प्राइसेस गिरेंगी, we should be sold in the market. So this is how people work. तो यहाँ पर when the prices are low, they will buy bonds. और यहाँ जब prices are high, they will sell bonds. इसी वजह से the demand for speculation is too high at this point because everyone is selling their bonds. And at this point, the demand for money is low because they want to buy those. ये speculation का process है and understanding है. You can look into the detailed lectures and you will find that. और फिर finally, when we add all three diagrams over here to find out the total demand for money, it is called the liquidity preference curve theory. जहां हम ये तीनों को जब ऐड करते हैं तो हमारे पास एक टोटल डिमांड फॉर मनी निकल आता है एंड द टोटल डिमांड फॉर मनी बेसिकली लुक्स लाइक इट ऑब्वियसली टेक्स द शेप लाइक अगर मैं एक्सप्लेन करूं पूरा उसके ऊपर सो बेसिकली वी सेड द transactionary demand is straight line. Precautionary is like this. And speculative is like this. तो हर इंटरेस्ट रेट के लेवल पे we're going to add 5 लाख प्लस 3 लाख प्लस 2 लाख will give us a shape where 3% के ऊपर the total demand for money will be 10 लाख रुपया. If the interest rate goes up to 7%, transactionary will not change. Precautionary might fall to 2 lakh rupees and speculative might fall to 1 lakh rupees. And so the total demand for money will be lesser. It will be 5 plus 2 plus 1, which is 8. ये हमारा लिक्विडिटी प्रेफरेंस कर्व होता है या डिमांड फॉर मनी का कर्व होता है. ठीक. So it's a horizontal summation of the three curves that we have. And finally, we will bring them together. You have money supply in the short run like this, and you have money demand, liquidity preference curve like this, and wherever it intersects, that is the market interest rate, and that is the amount of money in the economy. This is how the interest rate is determined in the society based on this idea. If interest rate is too high, demand for money is lower, and the supply for money is more, interest rate will start to fall down. Lekin if interest rate is too low in the economy, the demand will be too high, supply will be too low, and interest rates will start to rise, and you come back to the equilibrium. If for any reason money supply increases and shifts to the right, interest rate will automatically come down. तो यही जो हमारा बेसिक डिमांड सप्लाई के थ्रू जो हम पूरा मैकेनिज्म एक्सप्लेन करते हैं, दैट इज व्हाट आई एम एक्सप्लेनिंग ओवर हियर. ठीक हो गया? ये आपका मनी का चैप्टर का, दिस इज द टोटल डिमांड फॉर मनी एंड सप्लाई फॉर मनी. इसके ऊपर बेसिकली पूरे पूरे क्वेश्चंस आ सकते हैं. वी हैव टू बी इक्विप्ड टू आंसर दिस. एंड देन इसका किस तरीके से सोसाइटी पे इम्पैक्ट आता है, दैट इज द नेक्स्ट part of this entire discussion.